conclusion, so was the order mystical? I kind of touched on that. I think it became mystical for Weishaupt, I don't think it was the object to be a mystical society. I think a lot of the stuff that they cooked up, that Kniga brought to the table was, to add mystery and romance and to recruit and get this, people want to join secret stuff. I know I do. It's cool. It's fun stuff. And I think that really played into why it was so pervasive even now, this level of secretism. They really, branded this thing pretty much. They actually came up with a great concept that was so, secret and cool that it hung on far after its death. Did the order impact the development of Western Enlightenment? I mean, maybe. It's hard to say. Everybody's pulling from similar stuff. The information presented here was presented to a lot of Masons, and a lot of Masons went on, and these ideals spread, until Western democracy was born. I'm of the opinion that, the New World Order happened in the late 1700s. Like, it did. Western democracy happened. Perhaps there was an idea of a new world order, and we did it. It was done through a large number of revolutions and societies that happened. And did they influence American Revolution, French Revolution? Maybe their ideals did, maybe they didn't. But again, it doesn't matter. As sort of pressure cooker of Europe at the time is what really led to it. And, it's possible some of these concepts in formation and structure to get into it. Yes.
I think it was both rational and mystical. Frankly, the higher degrees would be the more mystical aspect.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I mentioned Eckhart Hausen. He joined the Illuminati, but left because he discovered it was too rational.
Right.
This was the age of Immanuel Kant. Descartes was a rationalist, and all these other rationalist philosophies were very attractive at that time in Europe. And that's what made Freemasonry and the Illuminati so initially successful in the case of the Illuminati, because people were interested in rationalist ideas. Mm-hmm. And I guess the distinction with the Illuminati is very rationalist, and Weishaupt presented it that way. However, it was one that was set out in pieces, right. Where you gained rational thinking from a superior.
Absolutely. If you read them in
David Hume, it was by experimentation. In the case of Kant, it was kind of was achieved by self-cognition. But in this case, it was hierarchical. Superior had to dispense the
which is common with many systems where they kind of weed out people who can effectively absorb the information that's given. And you're right. I think it's interesting because it's such a short period of time from when the degrees were founded to when it was over. You can actually just see the development, unlike Freemasonry or other systems where you see hundreds of years of development from 1700s based ritual to what we do now. It's so compressed that you can kind of see this arc. And I think I think that Weishaupt, and this is purely my opinion, he evolved. He became more in touch with his spirituality through these ideals of ethics and morals and, doing good things. And that brought him to these higher degrees, which he hoped, I think, whether he conferred them or not, he genuinely hoped to confer these degrees. He wanted to give that information out. And in that way, it is certainly both. So the last thing I'm going to touch on before opening up to everything is, I promise not to be speculative, but I have another lecture that some of you heard perhaps about another secret society we called the Oculists, and a cipher that was just cracked a couple of years ago called the Copiale cipher. Copiale cipher was happening, the date on it's a little vague, but it was kind of in and around this time. It's either a really random and weird little society about eye doctors that, is trying to bring light to everybody, or it's a blind, covering for Freemasonic ritual, which it almost most certainly is. But after doing the research here, the timeline and content of that particular document aligns more with the Illuminati than it does with Freemasonry, particularly because they talk about things like, inclusion of women, and that, you know, Masons were just, you know, making a bunch of stuff up, and they don't have the real secrets. And most importantly, they specify in this Copiale cipher the same 2 Scots degrees that are conferred and translated by the Illuminati. So I don't know. Nobody else has ever. I haven't seen any other scholar bring that up. But you know, if you want to know more about that, I will be talking about it on March 7th at South Pass at 7 p.m.
Is that possibly in reaction to the fact that they banned secret societies, so they decided to continue going forward and called it a physicians group or something?
The popular opinion about the Oculus and the Copiale cipher is that, you know, when you read it, if you're familiar with Masonic degrees or any other degree system, it's likely a blind, literally a blind, right? Like it was a joke. Like they're blind, and that term was used back when the alchemists wrote everything as a blind to bury, you know, their systems and secrets. And yeah, I think that is potentially it. If you do, I relied a lot on these 2 books, and without being able to give footnotes and parts that I want to give full credit to the authors of the Secret School of Wisdom is basically a straight translation. It's the only complete translation of the entire system of degrees. It's very dry, but if you're into reading dusty old ritual like I am, it's awesome. If you want a little bit more of an entertaining and, you know, point of view type of thing, The Perfectibilist, great book. It's a little earlier than The Secret School of Wisdom, so I think this contradicts a little bit of this, but together they provide a great point of view of, you know, facts and thoughts, and without reading either of these books, I would not have been able to share all this info with you, so please give those authors your money. And that's all I've got for everyone today, and if anyone has any thoughts or questions they'd like to bring to hear from. Yes.
With its short-lived time and just short stint, can you speculate on why it's so pervasive in modern media with all of the secret orders and different societies, why this one in particular holds true to so many people now?
I think it's an easy target because it's dead. You know, like we could go on about we can get conspiracy theory about all kinds of stuff, right? We can talk about Skull and Bones or Bohemian Grove and whatnot, but they're real, like they exist. There's people to sort of counterpoint, you know, whether I'm not going to cast an opinion on conspiracy theories about either of those organizations, but they're there. With this, you can make up anything you want. There's no one to defend it. Most people haven't read through 400 pages of like really boring like ritual stuff to like really figure out what they're about. So you can kind of just put anything out there and people will believe it. It's really easy to say that, you know, tie it to whatever you want because there's no one left to defend
It's
it.
got a cool and kind of sinister sound name.
It does. It's got great branding.
And so it's like, you know, there's no
Movie material.
Tupac wouldn't have called his album Order the Beats.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's the perfect brand for it.
Right.
Because there's plenty of other stuff. Conspiracy theorists, you know, laying everything in some invisible imaginary thing.
And it sounds cool.
It's the name. I think that's really.
And they're symbols, you know. I mean, they've got a pyramid. They've got cool stuff. Like, you know, it makes sense to me. So I think it's just it's an easy target. They've got great content. It's easy to grab onto. It also it's all from this wellspring of stuff like that is real too, right? Like, you know, they really touched on a lot of, you know, core mythology. You know, Athena. I mean, it's like their mythology goes back so far that it's identifiable and easy to grasp on.
Just want to make
sure.
And I think that the use of such a nebulous thing as the source being from these unknown elders, there's nobody to attack there. You know, a lot of times people will debunk the source, but the source they've made so very mysterious. Now, if an order lasts a long time, that kind of an origin gets filled in, and I use as an example the Theosophists who grew out of Blavatsky's writings almost exactly a century later. And at the beginning, it was just the elders of the or the masters of the wisdom, and it was only in later decades that gradually they became known by initials and eventually by names, and those got connected with people like Saint Germain and some Enlightenment kind of people too. But that, I think, adds to the kind of mystical aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree with all the points that have been made so far, but I'd like to add that I think its popularity in modern times also has a little bit to do with their association with Freemasonry. We can't necessarily, point a finger at anybody because the group is gone, but because they did have that association with Freemasonry early on, and Freemasonry continues to this day, I think that kind of lends credibility or lends, some sort of interest to the group. If they had nothing to do with Freemasons, I don't think we'd be talking. Well, we obviously wouldn't be talking about it now. But yeah, I don't think they would have the same popularity that they do.
That's a really good point. That it's something that didn't exist, but tangentially with a group that does exist. That makes sense.
And making it with the association with Freemasons, just to build on what you were saying, Sam, that also creates this place where the secret stuff that's supposed to be going on within Freemasonry is going on, because you look at the Grand Lodges and places like this. These are pretty mainstream type of organization. So where's the part of Freemasonry that's running the world? Well, they're the ones that are still underground, don't hold public installations or any of that kind of stuff.
Andrew, you were before Joseph. So.
I was just wondering, I seem to recall from your discussion about the oculists that one of their degrees involved restoring sight to someone who was blind, which sounds a lot like the Latin helping the blind see or whatnot. So I was wondering, building off of that recollection of mine and what you said earlier about some seeming overlap, have you any intent on continuing your research into the connections between them?
Well, it's kind of a newly thought idea. But yeah, if I can track it down, I'm certainly interested. The thing about the Copiale cipher, for those of you who don't know, it's the most recently decoded. It eluded decryption for decades. I mean, they found this thing in the 70s on a shelf in a German library. And what the heck is this? It's super complex substitution code. And it wasn't until some scientists here in California actually used machine learning and image pattern recognition to crack it, and they cracked this thing open, and it's like, okay, it's Society of the Oculus. And then you read it, and you're like, no, I think that's a mistranslation, because some of it you could easily substitute, like Master of the Lodge, Lodge, like you put it in a Masonic lens, and it seems Masonic. Put it in an Illuminati lens, which I never thought to do, it starts to feel a little bit more accurate. Yes, Tony?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I love the books too, but, I always scratch my head at the thought, why would someone start an order like this if it didn't have a purpose or a task that needed to be carried out? And why was Masonry a stepping stone for their members? And basically, what I'm asking is, like, do you think that, because I kind of don't know or can't say for certain if they're still not around, because if one of the reasons or one of the ways to become was through Masonry, then therefore they still have a connection because they are still Masons. But if there was a reason to start that order, and it was a task to be carried out, I often question if it was just a way to rouse the aristocratics with power to carry that out. because, you know, we're speaking of a time where a lot of people wanted to be in a secret society because they felt that it gave them an edge, or it made their status and their prestige jump up. They were getting memberships for, you know, buying memberships, wasn't being earned. And so I'm just wondering if anyone's really came to a decent conclusion as to what they were doing and why.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hoped that I covered some of that. They certainly had like a really specifically written objective, you know, which was to overcome oppression, you know, whether it was religious oppression or governmental oppression, via instilling, you know, moralist, rationalist, and other ideals. They had, unlike, you know, Masonry, which is just like, hey, be a good guy. Like, there's not really Freemasonry doesn't have a purpose other than the purpose you bring to you. It brings to you. These guys were like, no, we have a purpose. We want to see these governments change. We don't like what Bavaria is becoming, and we get a bunch of like-minded people together under the air of secrecy. We can make things happen and promote change. Now, I don't agree that that promotion of change was through revolution. From what I've read and from the historical record, there's nothing pointing to Weishaupt being an actual revolutionary other than having revolutionary ideas. Now, did other people take revolutionary ideas and start revolutions? Heck yeah. I mean, France changed, America changed, you know, that all happened. I can say factually, though, that if there are orders calling themselves Illuminati, which, like, God knows, I'm sure there are. I mean, there are people calling themselves all kinds of things. And, you know, heck, you can buy this book and just read it and make the stuff and say, hey, we got Illuminati's going on. Let's start doing it. Yeah, you know, right, we have it here. You can just check it out and make your own secret school of wisdom. But I don't believe it continued on past the 1790s. I can say factually that Freemasonry of today, mainstream Freemasonry of today, has absolutely nothing to do with this dead order. You know, but I can't say that there's not some group of people controlling stuff. Who knows? Like, I don't know. That's about my figure. Wishful.
Brian, I kind of think you answered in part the question that this young brother over here asked. You said the Illuminati tried to make moral people. That was part of their objective. And when that happens, it of course creates a legacy. Now, whether the institution dies or continues, the legacy is still there. A lot of Freemasons, for example, were involved with the Illuminati, and just because they closed down didn't mean that those Freemasons didn't take whatever they learned from them with them and apply it to their lives or in whatever way they were involved elsewhere. So there's a legacy that still exists, and even Masonic lodges here in the United States today may have some kind of, may owe something to them. We don't really know.
Exactly, and when I think that some Freemasons may be offended even by the fact that I say, yes, there's a direct connection between Freemasonry and Illuminism and the Illuminati. Like, they influenced and overlapped so much.
Many of the Freemasons we venerate today were members.
Exactly, precisely that. So where does that crossover turn into an identifiable group that still exists? I mean, you know, if you look, how do you even define Freemasonry, right? Because there were all of these other rights. People were making rights like crazy. People were selling degrees, you know, I mean, they're just cranking them out, and people were just going around like buying up levels, and they all got solidified into a system that I personally am a fan of. But, you know, Freemasonry owes a lot to a lot of people, and I would say that there is certainly some impact.
I want to add on to the universality of it all. This kind of ties it all in. Any group or any society that has the goal of self-development and social reform or improvement through rites of passage that focus on the Gnostic experience is by default Illuminist, and especially with the emphasis on the resistance of dogma from whatever is the political environment or the religious dogma. Like, resistance to those two forces, developing self, reform, social reform. That's one expression in Bavaria 300 years ago. Technically, Freemasonry has those same ideals now. And many other societies, don't even go back to tribal societies globally, have had that same stint. of rites of passage through a direct Gnostic experience.
Well, thank you all so much for making the trip out here. And